Hey guys, welcome back to another video. Today we're going to be discussing The Amazing Spider-Man 3 and why Sony is most likely going to be coming out with the movie pretty soon. Now, this is just my opinion and why I think it will be coming out in the next couple of years and not made by Marvel Studios. Now, don't forget to like the video, subscribe, and comment down below what you guys think about The Amazing Spider-Man and if you think the movie should come out. Now let's start off with the number one topic. Does Andrew Garfield want to come back for the film? Now, of course, in plenty of interviews, Andrew Garfield has stated that he would love to come back as Spider-Man, and Sony has talked to him about it, but he has denied it. The reason he has denied it is because he doesn't like the story. He feels like it's going to be worse, and no one's going to like the movie. Now, of course, Amazing Spider-Man 1 and Amazing Spider-Man 2, some people don't like, and of course Sony thinks they're horrible movies. Now, The Amazing Spider-Man 1 was really good, and The Amazing Spider-Man 2 is good. Now, people have their opinions, of course, but they are still really good films. One of the things that Andrew Garfield has stated is that his Spider-Man needs to have a good story for the film. Now, of course, if he does come back for a good story, his universe will be the same universe as Morbius, Kraven the Hunter, Madam Web, the Venom movies, and of course his first Amazing Spider-Man and his second one. Now, of course, there's going to be plenty of other movies that come out later in the future that will most likely have Andrew Garfield in them, but he will have to stick in that universe. Now, of course, in my opinion, if they do make an Amazing Spider-Man 3, the villain would be Venom. That's going on to our second topic, Venom. Now, of course, Venom is one of the villains that people want to see fight Spider-Man. And specifically, people want to see Andrew Garfield's Spider-Man, of course, face off against Tom Hardy's Venom. Now, it's a big topic going around that people want to see Tom Holland's Spider-Man go against Tom Hardy's Venom more than they want to see Andrew Garfield's Spider-Man go against Tom Hardy's Venom. But that's actually false. If you ask Amazing Spider-Man fans, or if you ask Spider-Man fans, they would rather see Andrew Garfield's Spider-Man go against Tom Hardy's Venom. The reason being is because Andrew Garfield's Spider-Man is more experienced and has more years under his belt being Spider-Man than Tom Holland's Spider-Man. And of course, in my opinion, Tom Holland's Spider-Man is not ready to fight Venom. He still has a couple movies to go before he fights Venom, even though we have already seen the symbiote in his universe. Now, of course, if it ever happens, maybe in the 5th movie for Tom Holland, he will fight Venom, but I do not think he'll be Tom Hardy's Venom. Now, let's say we do get the Amazing Spider-Man 3 with Venom. Okay, Andrew Garfield fights Tom Hardy. I believe that Venom 3 will have to come out first. Maybe mention Andrew Garfield's Spider-Man in the film, and eventually those characters will face off. Now, of course, you have Toxin, I believe is the character, and the symbiote at the end of Let There Be Carnage that is hinted will be the next villain or the foe that Venom will fight in the next film. Now, in my opinion, I would go for that. But as long as you put Andrew Garfield's Spider-Man in that movie, hinting that he was gone throughout the years of Morbius and Venom, he was not Spider-Man, because it is official that Spider-Man Andrew Garfield in The Amazing Spider-Man 2 was not Spider-Man for about 6 months. It said more of 5 months, but it's 6 months. And that could be a perfect time for those films to have passed. Now, of course, Venom fights Toxin in his 3rd film, and he is searching for Spider-Man, but is, of course, interrupted by Toxin, and has to worry about that first. Now, The Amazing Spider-Man 3 would have to come out after that, so that now Venom is sure that there's a Spider-Man in his universe, and that they can fight. Now, of course, The Amazing Spider-Man 3 would have to mention Morbius and the Vulture and all of that. Not too big, but maybe newspaper articles or maybe some wall art like graffiti or news updates. Now, everyone gives a lot of crap to Morbius and the Venom movies. Those I feel like they're filler movies for the Amazing Spider-Man universe. I like Venom 1 and Venom 2, but then you have Morbius, which they tried making him a hero and I didn't like it. And then Vulture in that universe was pretty cool. But honestly, those films were just filler movies for the TASM universe. Now let's move on to our next topic. Will there be multiple villains in The Amazing Spider-Man 3? Honestly, I do not think there will be multiple villains in The Amazing Spider-Man 3. I believe that if Sony decides to make an Amazing Spider-Man 3, of course it will be with just Venom, because that's what fans are wanting, just Venom, not to throw in another villain. Now, of course, we will be getting scenes with the Goblin, we would be getting scenes with the Lizard. Now, everyone's like, oh, we didn't like those characters. They would just be in jail. At that time, they're in jail. They're in containment. They're not out there yet. So when, let's just say, if Venom gets thrown into jail, he would have to go and meet them. That would be a great end credit scene and something to continue Andrew Garfield's universe. But let's just say Venom and Spider-Man face off, and towards the end they have to team up for some odd reason. Something like that could work if they want to keep Venom a hero, because they're trying to make Venom a hero in the movies. That's what his movies were for. But honestly, I would love to see a darker turn for Eddie Brock and Venom, and I would love to see them really try to take down Spider-Man and become the villain. Now, of course, for topic 4, would you stick with the story in the past? Now, by that, of course, I mean, would the story stay the same as if what they were wanting for the previous Amazing Spider-Man 3 movie when they were going to make it? For that, I say no. The reason being is because they wanted to bring back Gwen. They wanted to bring back Gwen's father. They wanted to do all this ridiculous stuff that really wouldn't work, and it would have been worse than The Amazing Spider-Man 2. Now, what you have to realize is I'm a big fan of The Amazing Spider-Man 2. I love that film. And there's a lot of stuff you have to do in Amazing Spider-Man 3 to actually reference his older movies. You honestly just can't forget The Amazing Spider-Man 2 and what the flaws were for that movie. You have to bring a Spider-Man into this universe that is not pulling his punches, okay? He is actually going full out on these villains and they're terrified of Spider-Man. You cannot bring a Miles Morales into this universe because that's the MCU's job. Okay, that's the Into the Spider-Verse job. Okay, that Miles is already introduced, and I have a feeling the MCU is going to take over for that. And Sony, of course, is going to have a say in it, but I don't think there's going to be a Miles Morales in the Amazing Spider-Man universe. For the Amazing Spider-Man 3, you're going to have a brand new story. A story fans are going to be willing to see. Of course, people are not going to like this film if it comes out. There's going to be people who hate it. But the Spider-Man fans, the fans who really enjoy movies, will be the real people who get the choice to say, oh, this movie was great. Now, of course, everybody has their opinion, but there's fans out there who just say every film is bad now from the MCU and Sony. Morbius wasn't that bad. If you watched it, of course, it was a film that looked like it was filmed in 2003, okay? But honestly, Sony had to change that movie so much because of COVID. So that really wasn't Sony's fault, per se. But the story was bad. You could switch things up in the movie and make that better. But if you're going to make an Amazing Spider-Man 3, you have to mention Morbius. You can't just forget about it. And I have a feeling if they do bring Vulture and Morbius into the TASM era, if you're going to fight Andrew Garfield Spider-Man, then you need for sure to make sure you have the Morbius movie mentioned. The events of Morbius, the events of Venom, Venom Let There Be Carnage in that film, so that the story makes sense and doesn't confuse other fans. So basically the story has to make sense from the previous movies all the way to the present of The Amazing Spider-Man 3. Now, of course, if you have this film with a good story, you have Venom as the villain, and you give Andrew Garfield his time to shine as Spider-Man again, of course the film will do really well. There's a lot more that the film has to do, but that's up to Sony. And honestly, I don't need for them to have the Marvel Studios help them with the film. I have a feeling Sony can do really well as long as they listen to fans. Just listen to the fans and make your film. You will have a really good film if you listen to your fans. Now, of course, my final topic for the discussion of The Amazing Spider-Man 3 is the future for Andrew Garfield's Spider-Man, for the future of the TASM universe. Now, of course, these past villain movies would have to be in the TASM universe, but they can, of course, fix that if they listen to the fans. And honestly, take notes from their really good movies. Now, of course, we got Madam Web, Across the Spider-Verse, Beyond the Spider-Verse coming out later in the future. Now, it is rumored that in Across the Spider-Verse and Beyond the Spider-Verse, Tom Holland is supposed to be getting his live-action appearance in the film. Now, of course, Andrew Garfield could have the same thing to do as Tom Holland. He could get his live-action appearance. He could have the ability to cross over just like he did in No Way Home. Now, in Across the Spider-Verse and Beyond the Spider-Verse, No Way Home will be mentioned. Doctor Strange will be mentioned. So if they're going to start mentioning Doctor Strange, I have a feeling Sony and Marvel Studios are going to be able to have more leeway with each other, allowing The Amazing Spider-Man 3 to come out, but also using different villains, and it's going to look amazing. Now, of course, what does that have to do with The Amazing Spider-Man 3? If Andrew Garfield does come back in those films and has either his animated or live-action appearance, he will for sure be able to come back for The Amazing Spider-Man 3. Now, of course, Sony has shown us they can make a good Spider-Man movie alongside Marvel Studios, and of course they can do it by themselves, as long as they listen to the fans, and honestly listen to where Andrew Garfield wants to go with this. Maybe also Tom Hardy. Bring in Andy Serkis as maybe helping with the film, I have no idea. Maybe a second director, but it would really help out with the films because they know what they want, fans know what they want. So honestly, I would trust Sony to make an Amazing Spider-Man 3 by themselves. And I don't think Marvel Studios would have the time to really make an Amazing Spider-Man 3 unless they throw a team together that's not working on any other film for Marvel Studios, which they're throwing out a lot at us right now. But other than that, as long as they do a good story, great characters, bringing back all of the old characters to come back for a film, flashbacks, all of the good stuff that a movie does that we can love would really, really work. So as long as everything is right in this film, as long as they get everything correct, they make a great story, great villains, they bring back, of course, the final fight between Rhino and Spider-Man, of course, that would be great. Showing the final battle, continuing the battle itself, showing what really happened, and then going to Venom. You don't have to overstuff the movie with villains to make it perfect. It would be perfectly fine with just 2 villains in the film. And honestly, if this works, if the film turns out to be great and they make it and it goes into theaters, I can say it would be better than No Way Home. Even though that had all 3 Spider-Man, I still believe that it could be better than No Way Home. And that's what I say for Spider-Man 4 as well. As long as everything's right, those movies could be better than No Way Home because we got our characters back, our Spider-Man back. Now, of course, I do have much more ideas and thoughts for The Amazing Spider-Man 3. I love his first films, The Amazing Spider-Man 1 and The Amazing Spider-Man 2. I could go on for days, but I will be making more videos for The Amazing Spider-Man 3 later. Reason for that is because there's not a lot you can fit into this video. And for that, we will be having more videos for The Amazing Spider-Man 3. So if you guys stay tuned for that, let's get this video up to at least 50 likes right now. We're kind of low on the channel, but let's get there. Don't forget to like and subscribe. And I hope you guys have a wonderful day. Make sure to be safe. I'll catch you guys in the next one.